There's two aspects to trust. There's professional trust and there's personal trust. Professional trust is, do I believe that this person can get this thing done? And personal trust is that they will. The secret of sales is it's being very good at what you do, being able to clearly articulate and demonstrate that, and then the people who know what they're looking for recognize it, appreciate it, and are very keen and excited to work with you.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm sitting down with Timothy Hannam, a good friend here based in Dubai, a brilliant young entrepreneur from the UK that I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with over the last year. He's just come back from Necker Island, Richard Bransons Island, where he's been nominated for an award. Tell us more about the experience you had at Richard Bransons Necker Island.
Yeah, this is something that actually I've done for the last 3 years. And it's part of a group called Maverick 1000, fantastic group of people. And who they are is they are world-leading entrepreneurs who are very impact-driven, and they tend to connect together with each other when they're looking for to make more impact in the world, to just have a lot of fun and really grow together. And Maverick Next, which is the part of the organization that I'm part of, is the under 30 part of the organization. And what they're doing is they're trying to find the world's best young entrepreneurs, and then they connect them back with these incredible people in Maverick 1000 for mentoring, opportunities, etc. And so, this year was the third year. I was very fortunate to be going back in for a third year. And it was a lot of fun, actually. We did a little, I call it publicity stunt, not actually for publicity, but to stand out to all these incredible Mavericks on Necker Island, as well as Richard, and see if we could get a little bit of attention, which worked out actually very well. And we ended up with Richard getting his revenge on the little prank that we pulled, where he came up behind us and dunked a big bucket of ice water all over us, which was fun.
Nice, yeah, I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you went with your business partner?
Yes, I went with my business partner, Guillermo, a fantastic man. And we run a tech studio together called Seven Sigma.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's the reason I mainly want to sit down with you today, is to run through how you guys are growing a tech studio. But I think a bit of background will also be quite useful in that you've created 2 companies now which have been quite successful. And I know you don't like to get into the finer details of these companies, but can you walk us through the marketing agency you started before and how that went?
Yeah. So, I had a friend in high school who said to me once the saying, work hard in silence and let success make all the noise. I really like that. I don't like to get into specifics, and there's a lot of people, especially in the internet, who are talking about all these like fancy sounding metrics, which you can fake, or you can falsify, or you can find a presentation on something to make it look and sound amazing, which I could certainly do, but I don't think it holds a lot of credibility, and I don't like to engage in that. Now, my first company was, as you say, a marketing agency, where we worked a lot doing a lot of different paid advertising and a lot of different type of work. And that was my first business that went very well. And what we're looking to do, and what we were looking to do, is my primary goal in that is I was like, well, I want to become a fantastic marketer. So how do I do that? Probably by doing marketing for companies, and probably for a lot of companies. And so instead of going and being a marketer for a company, I said, why don't I go and serve lots of different companies? So we did that. We built out a team. I think at our largest, we had 24 people, for example, working with us full time.
Nice.
And went very well. I learned a tremendous amount. And my philosophy there is, if I can build that company, and if I can learn the skills around sales, marketing, client acquisition, obviously marketing from the perspective of doing that work for our clients, and as well as operations, hiring, project management, all this kind of stuff, that's going to set a fantastic foundation for any future businesses that I want to build. And that has played out actually very well with our current company, Seven Sigma, that, as I mentioned before, I run with my business partner, Guillermo. He is a fantastic engineer, software engineer, and thinker. And together we've built out Seven Sigma from basically nothing through to what it is today, which is remarkable and very fun and fulfilling journey. And it's very fun doing it with such a remarkable person as well.
Nice. Yeah. So a lot of those skills have transferred from the marketing company into the development agency you're running now.
Yeah.
what I've noticed about you is you're exceptionally good at communication and sales, and that's primarily your role within Seven Sigma. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Right. So Guillermo's handling all the software development and the team management kind of side of things, and you're looking after sales, communication, clients, and all the kind of day-to-day admin. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say that's correct. And I think the big carryover between the two is to be a fantastic marketer, you need to be really knowledgeable about your customer, because the way you're going to build or like an ad is not from having very nice media buying and like how you set things up in Facebook or anything else. And the way you build a landing page that's going to convert well is you don't make it look nice, etc. You need to think about and really truly understand who is your customer. And from that, you can build that into fantastic marketing collaterals. The same thing's true in software, where a lot of the work that I do is, yes, around client acquisition, communication, etc. But I'd say it's actually also primarily around product, because we have clients who come to work with us and they're saying, okay, I want to build something. And my sales conversation is not really me selling or trying to persuade anyone of anything. It's me understanding and clarifying what is the product we're trying to build, how is that going to provide value to the end user or their company, depending on who if it's an internal product or if it's meant to be like a SaaS platform they're going to sell. And then how are we going to build something, a lot of design work in this, that's going to genuinely provide tremendous value. And that is the role that I end up playing a lot of.
Right. So you take a business requirement from the customer and then help them convert that into technical requirements with Guillermo's help.
Exactly. And I imagine someone with your background as well, because of course you also run a software development studio, is you've probably seen the intersection, especially because you don't have a co-founder, where you have to play both the technical role of someone like creating software engineering requirements and bridging the gap between that and business. And I imagine you've seen there's a delta and a gap between those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite interesting, the difference between our two companies and the different kind of stages that we work on. You're primarily working on MVPs, and you take a very personal approach to how you handle your clients, sitting down and talking with you through these things, because it's something that's very weak on my side, but you're exceptionally strong at that.
Yeah.
So with the tech company, what kind of systems are you building at the moment? What kind of clients are you taking on? What are the applications that you find are being the most successful within those kind of clients?
What we find and what we're seeing a lot of is everyone's looking to build AI, right? AI is a hot topic, and everyone who's looking to build software, I would say today, probably 95% of them are looking to, at least the ones that we're speaking to, are looking to build some form of software that's heavily integrated and reliant on AI. And often the type of clients we're picking up fit within one of two camps. Either they are, as you mentioned, like they're a startup, an MVP, often founded by a very experienced, very skilled entrepreneur who knows how to build a business, they just don't know how to build tech. Or the other side is normally, again, that same person, same persona overall, experienced entrepreneur, business owner, who are looking to build some form of software within their business. And what we see a lot of is these experienced business people, they recognize that there's a gap or there's a need or an opportunity in their business or in their market for some form of software automation, normally reliant on AI. That's a lot of generative AI primarily, and a lot of other things. Primarily, I'd say generative AI. I think it's the big hot topic, at least from 2024. And then the type of products that we're building is we've done everything from a script analysis tool for a Hollywood movie director through to a brilliant AI marketing software that works with fractional CMOs primarily to allow them to serve their clients and very rapidly create brilliant marketing documentation, and a number of other things. It's very cool, very exciting.
Nice.
And
yeah, we also see a lot of legacy kind of systems coming through to us looking to breach into the realm of AI. A lot of them are very slow to move though, and that's why they bring on these external teams like us to help them kind of get through that phase. How do you manage the clients along from the start of the project all the way through to the end of the project? I know you run a very personal approach, so I think it's worth talking about that.
Yeah. I tend to own the handover from, I call it the initial conversations and that you call that sales period through to design and product ideation. And then the handover I tend to have with my business partner is when we're ready to go from design into development. And we tend to both work on the design, him looking at it from a feasibility and practicality perspective and making sure everything's ready for development. So there's a smooth handover there. And I'm looking at it from the product perspective to make sure, are we building the thing the client wants, and two, the thing the client's going to find the most valuable. And so that's where we end up doing a lot of the work. And so the way that tends to look like for us and for our clients is we have these initial conversations where we understand the requirements. We're going to go in a lot more detail and understand, okay, why are these the requirements, and making sure, are we actually building the right thing or not? Because I think often, especially people that don't have a tech or a software background, it's very easy for them to say, I want this. And then we can usually add a lot of perspective. For example, we know what's going to be something that can be achieved very easily and quickly versus something that might be a lot more costly, takes a lot more time, etc. And because we can add that lens, as well as from experience saying, we've seen this work very well with other clients, for example, or we know what we can get to work very well, very quickly, is we're able to help them define like an MVP scope that's going to allow them to provide as much value as possible, as quickly as possible. And that's kind of what we try and focus on. It's pretty
Nice.
cool. How would you say that differs for you? Because as you mentioned, I think there's almost a little bit of a difference in our companies where we do a lot of startups, I call it almost innovation. And what you're doing is you're re-engineering very important, very large systems that are very complex. And you're having to work with a team who's used to working with a very old legacy system and bring it into the modern day tech world.
Yeah. So, I've got 20 years of dev experience working in large teams, building out large systems, part of cross-functional teams as well. So I've been very fortunate to work with some very intelligent people that have shown me the processes that are needed to build these systems out. So that's really where we kind of shine. When our clients come on to us, we're very structured. It all goes through our ticketing systems. Everything's broken down into small tasks. It's very, very structured. So I'd say that the main kind of difference is the way we kind of run our processes, in that we're very strict with our documentation and what the developers need to do. They follow a set of guidelines on how to control version management, how to communicate and stuff like that, which is more important on the later stages when you're working with a cross-functional team or slotting into a team with another development company. But I think you touch on two great points there as well that come up quite often in sales calls for us as well, is cost and trust. A lot of clients are worried, can I trust this new development company? They've been burnt before. How do you tackle that, and how do you tackle the issue of keeping a project within the kind of cost restraints and budget and time frame that the client has specified at the beginning of the project? Because I know you're quite good at that too.
I had a very, very good friend who helped me tremendously with, I call it learning sales. What he taught me is there's two aspects to trust. There's professional trust and there's personal trust. Professional trust is, do I believe that this person can get this thing done? And personal trust is that they will.
Right.
Because, for example, they're separate things. Because one is this person going to do everything in their ability to fulfill and keep their word? That's a personal thing.
Right.
Professional is how capable is the individual to actually get the work done? And if either of those are in question, then chances are they won't want to work with you. The way we demonstrate trust and that we're trustworthy is in part from showing, for example, proof of the works we've done, etc. But is primarily from how we lead the conversation. Because when people come to us, they are coming to us as the expert. And I would view it as strange for them to be engaging with a prospective team, and then, for example, them having to be leading the conversations, moving the conversation forward, etc. And so when these people are coming to us and say, hey, this is what we want to do, I say, great. let me clarify that. Let me make sure I've understood it. Have I understood all this correctly? They're like, yeah, I think so. I'm like, great. And I'm able to understand it quickly because I have a large frame of reference from all the different projects, all the different clients we served, etc. And then say, okay, have you thought about this? And how's this meant to work? And I immediately start asking quite insightful questions that often our prospective clients haven't considered. And it starts to very tangibly start moving forward and making progress very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think people see that and recognize that. And we're very good at providing value very quickly. So for example, when we go from design into development, we're actually able to develop things very, very quickly because the way we structure our team and the work that my business partner does, for example, is a fantastic engineer, and the team we have are fantastic. And we're actually able to move things forward very quickly. And so we're able to provide a lot of value very fast, which is most people would be, I think this is wonderful. And we spend more time on making sure we're doing the right thing. Then once we're doing it, we blow through it. And so really I'd say that's what the secret of sales is it's being very good at what you do, being able to clearly articulate and demonstrate that. And then the people who know what they're looking for recognize it, appreciate it, and are very keen and excited to work with you. I imagine you probably experienced something similar because from my own experience talking with you and we've recommended several clients to you in the past, and the feedback I've received from all of those is always phenomenal. And they say, Sean's team is amazing. Everything runs exactly as it should and like exactly as we expected, which in tech is remarkable because things always go wrong. And yet somehow your team always manages to do the thing at the right time in the right way. And there's great communication. And the way you set everything up is very nice. I imagine you see that flowing through into your sales process because again, the people that know what they're looking for see it in you and they're like, this is the one.
Yep, I would say I'm not nearly as good at sales as you are, but I'm very good at client retention. And the biggest thing I find there is just communicating early on. So if there's an issue coming up, we want to communicate it to the client as soon as possible so they understand there's going to be a delay in time or there's going to be an additional cost here. Mm-hmm. These things do happen along the project cycle. And when you've got 20 or 30 different projects, you're going to get one or two that overruns on time or there's something unforeseen. We do everything in our power to predict the cost of a project. So we run a proper PERT estimation process, which is common in software development. But sometimes, rarely you get it wrong. As long as you communicate and you work in the best interest of the client, they're always very happy. And that goes for any business, I guess.
You mentioned a PERT estimate. What is a PERT estimate and how do you use that for your clients?
So PERT estimate is a range of times. It's a software development estimation process. Sorry. It's a range of time frames for a specific task. So you break down a project into a load of different tasks, make them as small as possible. I'll usually get our senior dev to do this initially. They'll write down a title for the task, a description of how we're going to implement it, and if it needs more technical scoping, we'll do further technical scoping and increase the discovery phase. But generally, you'll get a pessimistic, an optimistic, and a likely time frame for that task. So the client knows they've got a range of 10, 20, 30 hours for that task to be. So they'll always come out with, this is the worst case scenario of what it's going to cost in time and money before they get started with us. And any software company that's not running through that process is going to cause issues, right? So it's a necessity to be doing these type of things. If you have these processes in place, everything else works very smoothly. A developer has to be able to communicate very well, very quickly, and follow your processes. It's almost more important, I would say, than their level of skill. Because if they're not communicating early, a project can overrun, and then you realize we're like 2 weeks late on this, we have to go back and do everything again for the customer. And it just turns into a terrible experience for the customer. You lose that customer. And it costs on average, I think, 4 or 5 times more to attain a new customer than it does to retain an existing customer. So I would rather prioritize retaining those customers than trying to get new customers all the time. And our customers have been with us for years now, which is brilliant. So going back to your experience starting the development company, Learning what you have now, is there anything you do different from the beginning to try and accelerate your growth?
That is a great question. What I think I would probably say is I recognize that there's a fairly meaningful difference between I call it the business person and the software person. And I've seen this even play out, for example, with my business partner, where he is an exceptional engineer, and engineers are trained to look at where are things going to go wrong. And a business person, an entrepreneur, is trained to say, where is there an opportunity? Mm-hmm. And those things are not the same thing and often come into conflict. And so, for example, I've had lots of conversations with various engineers, and they say, oh, that can't be done. And I'm like, well, what do you mean it can't be done? And we start digging into the details, and I find, it can be done. It's just perhaps not quite as easy as maybe I thought as an entrepreneur. Or for example, what you were just mentioning about a PERT estimate is say, well, there's an optimistic outcome, there's a pessimistic outcome, there's probably a likely outcome. And you have to understand that there is that range. And so probably one of the biggest things that I would emphasize more if I was starting again is really bridging the gap in understanding between, I'll call it the engineering side and then the business side. Internally within the business and primarily with clients, because clients often might come with the expectation of, oh yeah, this should be pretty simple. And maybe it would be optimistically. But if we're being pessimistic, maybe it wouldn't. And then there's a lot more likely outcome that's probably somewhere in the middle. And so I'd say probably bridging that gap is one primary thing. The second one is we've probably went through a little phase where we tried growing a little bit too quickly and we delegated out things a little bit too fast. And we then contracted again. We brought more tasks in to be handled by a smaller, much more agile team. Is what we find is when you start getting a big team, you end up very bloated. And we don't want to be bloated. We want to be fast and agile and very efficient. And many of our clients work with us because we're exceptionally good at what we do. And if we try and grow too quickly, we risk diluting that exceptional culture. So that's also another lesson that we've had, which we've applied this year, and then we're seeing the benefits of.
Keep that personal touch, right? Keep like a boutique agency. It is a struggle I see for the companies that grow into much larger agencies, and generally they would move into team augmentation and also software development. I'm not sure the split, but I would guess around 50% kind of thing. I know you guys work a lot in AI. How is AI affecting you as a company? I know you use it in your sales process. You've recommended tools to me, which I haven't started using, but I will, through to kind of your devs using new tools and the implication for the whole kind of business side of things as well, where companies are able to create MVPs very quickly now with things like ChatGPT or Claude or Cursor. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that AI is going to be a fantastic enabler on business. And as execution becomes easier, the value of great ideas and great thinking is only going to increase. So for example, the more you understand your end user, how are they going to want to use it, that's going to become the moat and more valuable, as opposed to being able to quickly create a piece of software. Mm-hmm. What we see today is, for example, the ability to create software with AI is a lot less good than people might think.
Yeah.
It's probably very impactful to very junior or very new to software engineering people, because AI can be as good as them and it will make all the same mistakes as them. And just like when you're building a software product, you wouldn't staff it entirely with junior engineers, you certainly wouldn't do the same thing either with building most software products. So what we see, for example, is AI has a role in software development. It's not as big as the hype would lead you to believe, as it can actually quite impair the software development process. But for example, I was discussing this with my business partner the other day, and he mentioned sometimes he catches himself with a small change that would take him 30 seconds to do it manually, but instead of just doing it himself, he'll ask Cursor to do it, and Cursor will go and take 3 minutes because it's an agentic structure. So he needs to say, okay, what is it asking? And then what do I need to do? And then it makes the change and then it checks it. And it takes a while and it's less efficient than him just doing the change himself. Yep. And so I think AI in software development has a role, nowhere near as big of a role as everyone's making it out to be. But maybe in the future, as things get better, maybe it'll have more of a role. More broadly in business, I think AI has a lot of power, particularly around personalization, particularly around ideation, and understanding and learning things more quickly. Those are the big three that I see. There are other use cases of AI, but I think it's mainly the three I mentioned. For example, some great use cases that we've seen from clients and projects that we've worked with is doing things like we have a client of ours who has millions of people on an email list, and they've got form responses from these millions of people telling them about why they love their brand, their experience with the industry that they're in, why they do what they do, all these insights, and they use that for personalization of email flows to increase sales. They'd use that data to, for example, create marketing copy and content, and it's highly trained. They use it for understanding and building future products because they know exactly the pain points people have, they're able to see exactly what they want and why, etc. Or for example, another one of our clients, again, a marketing example, is what they do is they use AI to create very strategic marketing documents, information about your ICP, your ideal client persona, about your product. Why does your ICP, what do they find valuable in your product? And what is your company positioning? How do you want to position yourselves relative to the rest of the market, etc. You create all of those fantastic documents, then you train the AI on that again, and now you can say, create a blog article or a LinkedIn post, or help me come up with a campaign for X or Y or Z, and it's able to go ahead and create really incredible work based on not just a great framework for writing a Facebook post, but actually highly customized and tailored to exactly who it is that you want to be talking to, and you can talk to the pain points they have uniquely and why they'd find your product valuable, and it just transforms the marketing process. And those are the kind of areas. I'm probably biased towards thinking about marketing ones because that's also my background.
Yep. Yeah.
But that's the areas that I see really, really powerful. And it's also how I use it in my own business.
Yep. So we're not in danger of being replaced by AI anytime soon?
No, not yet. Not yet. I saw a really interesting video recently. It was kids from possibly 1967 being asked about what they imagine the year 2000 to be. And they were all saying, automation is going to remove all the jobs and no one's going to have any jobs, and that the world is going to be very devoid of meaning. And automation is here, and automation has wiped out a lot of jobs, and we've ended up with a lot more jobs being created as well in response. And so yes, I certainly don't think that AI is going to destroy the world, though I do think it's going to change it very meaningfully. And the people that are using AI and learn about it and understand it are going to the people that are going to be the main beneficiaries. And those who don't, just like someone who doesn't use software from 1967 to today, they're going to be left behind very aggressively.
It's only as good as the person using it as well, right? You've got to supply it with enough context on what you're doing. So you mentioned sales there. So you want to put in like your ICP and what the client's asking for and their pain points. Like you said, if you give it one or two lines for a prompt, it's going to be far less efficient than someone that knows how to use it and how to talk in a sales kind of tone of voice and stuff like that.
Exactly.
How do you think you're going to grow in the future?
Our overall strategy right now is we are aiming to become as efficient as possible at creating fantastic tech products. From initial ideation with the client, doing brilliant design, and then developing and building things very fast and very quickly. What we're looking to do over time is become extremely good at that whole creation process, such that for our own software products in the future, we can create brilliant software quickly. And what we're trying to do now is become and exhibit that excellence with the overall software creation in combination with looking at what are the opportunities for figuring out distribution. Because you can build fantastic tech product, and what we've seen fairly almost unanimously across our clients which we've served a lot. And even the people who have not become our clients, I've probably spoken with certainly hundreds, maybe not quite 1,000, but certainly hundreds of people over the last year. And there is a very clear distinction between those who already have distribution established and those who don't. And the ones who have distribution established already, and they need to figure out how to build a tech product, once they figure out how to build it, they go on and they're successful. The ones that don't have any form of distribution yet established, and they say, well, first I'm going to build my tech product, and then I'm going to go try and figure out distribution. That works, and it can work, but the likelihood of success is significantly lower.
Yep.
And so for us, what we're looking to do in our strategy is we want to become truly excellent, even more than we are today, with the overall software creation process, especially in speed and the ability to move quickly, and then figure out distribution. And once we have both of those elements, and the big one we're missing right now is distribution. We're great at getting and finding prospective software clients, but if we were to have our own SaaS platform, for example, how would we distribute that is less clear.
Right.
If we can figure that out, then we can start very quickly spinning out very high quality software products that we can test with users, get feedback, iterate and improve, and make that more of a focus over time.
Nice. So ship fast, sort distribution. Yeah, I think the difference going forward is going to lie in distribution. As AI gets better and makes it easier for people to create products, it's really going to be super important on, do you have distribution sorted? Another area that I think it's useful to touch on, because of your age and what you've accomplished so far, is you guys work extremely hard. How important do you think that is? And how has it played a role in getting you to this stage here? I know you guys are exercising every day, you're on top of your diet, you're working every hour you get. So yeah, if you could talk to that.
I think that for me personally, I'll talk about it from my personal perspective, I think that working very, very hard gives you a very significant competitive advantage. Because even if your unit of output is the same, if you can have, so on average, I work about 55 hours a week, and most people probably work somewhere between 30 to 40. And so simply from me having that much more time, if the unit of output is the same, I'm moving 50% quickly.
Yep.
And then because I'm actually working more, I dedicate a portion of that to learning and improvement and iteration. And so what I'm actively trying to do is I'm actively trying to increase the amount of productivity I get from each unit of output. And so if I'm working more than you are, not you specifically, but the metaphorical you, if I'm working more than a person and I'm actively increasing my output from, for example, better utilizing AI in my work, for example, just improving my skills from learning tools and so I can just move more quickly, now I'm working more and more efficiently with higher leverage. And that's just going to be a compounding benefit over time. I've certainly found that I've worked hard for a long period of time, but what I've found is I'm significantly more productive today than I was 3 years ago.
Yep.
And a major factor in that is I focused a lot more on my health, my diet, my exercise, being social, all these factors. And that actually in me comes to very significantly from Guillermo, my business partner, as he is someone who is in tremendous shape, takes tremendous care of himself and his health, and has been a major factor in, I'd say probably holding each other accountable for those things.
Nice.
And helping us both up level. We work together, we're very, very good friends, and we're also roommates. And I've said this before to people, probably to yourself, but when you live in such close proximity to such an incredible person, you're yourself forced to upgrade.
Yes, absolutely.
And I certainly find that that's worked for me tremendously, especially in the areas of health, productivity, even just working hard. And I'm sure Guillermo, or I'd hope Guillermo might say something similar.
Yep.
And even, for example, what we have, through Guillermo's creation, different mechanisms, for example, accountability, and keeping each other motivated and keeping it clear on why we're doing the things we're doing. Like 1 year ago, a little bit over, Guillermo suggested, and we created a Slack channel that's literally called Motivations. And you can scroll through it, And every day, Monday to Friday, both of us are sharing 3 reasons for doing what we're doing. And for me, for example, that might range from like driving or renting or buying a really nice fancy car like we came here today in, through to, for example, being able to support my family, my future wife and kids, all these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And it gives a lot of clarity and meaning to the work that we're doing. Because we're thinking about like, why is it that I'm actually working and doing what I'm doing, and what's the light at the end of the tunnel? Because sometimes working hard sucks.
Yep.
Right? It can be lonely, stressful, frustrating. You can be laying awake at night, unable to sleep, with your heart thudding and racing. Think about fuck, right? And like, it's a terrible experience to go through. But if there's meaning behind it, like why are you doing that, that the means can justify the end, or the end can justify the means. And yeah, so that's probably, I guess, a few insights, and probably the biggest one overall is simply just with Guillermo and the type of man that he is and the close proximity I have to him, is we make each other better.
Nice. And
we're constantly having feedback and communication, difficult conversations, great conversations, and we're forcing each other to work. And it's, how do you feel about that actually? Because obviously you're a solo founder, mm-hmm. and you still work to a very, very high level. And I imagine I've seen in you have tremendous self-discipline. You work very hard. You're waking up at 3:30 a.m. every day?
4 a.m. Yeah.
4 a.m. Mm. And then you're exercising 20,000 steps. You're working extremely hard, and your results show that. But what motivates you? What drives you?
I'm just one of those people that really enjoy doing these type of things. Like, I'm super disciplined. I'm very focused on business. I enjoy being part of different business groups, and that's how we met. And learning about business and entrepreneurs and creating things. And that also touches on a great point. All my friends are entrepreneurs. I hang around people that are super disciplined all the time. And I paid to go into these other groups as well, to be around these people. So you, not recently, I think you've been in Dubai a year now?
Yeah, yep. About a year and a half.
Year and a half. And what made you move to Dubai? Because you're also in that place where you can live wherever you want and work whenever you want. You could be on a beach in Thailand or Bali. Why are you not there? Why are you here in Dubai?
Yeah, I did that actually for a while. I spent about 2 years traveling extensively. And I used to go to a weekend or a few days in different places. I found that was actually very empty, or I found that I was constantly leaving before I really got to experience a place. And I'd go to the touristy hotspots, and it was I get a picture, but that was it. And so I actually adapted what I was doing, and I started traveling instead for periods of time, primarily with the aim of staying with friends. So, for example, I've spent several weeks in Toronto, for example, I think probably 8 weeks total. I spent several weeks in Los Angeles, in Warsaw, Poland, actually, with my now roommate and business partner, Guillermo. I've spent Medellin, big chunks of time all over the world. New York, for example, I spent 3 months, etc. Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been a lot of places. And really what I was looking for is to learn from the people that I was with and see how they live their lives. Both the area overall culturally, but also the person that I was staying with. And I think it's very fun to go and stay with people and see their lives and be like, oh, why do you do that? And like, for example, my very good friend and accountability partner in Toronto, who I stayed with, we had a very interesting conversation about how we fold our socks, right? Very, very niche thing, but very interesting. And it was interesting to see how, for example, he's Mexican, lives in Canada, raised in Canada. He's an exceptional person. He used to be a national team swimmer for Mexico, for example. He's lived in multiple places around the world. He also works in consulting where I used to work. And just being around someone of one of the smartest guys I've ever met, and being around people who perform and exist to such a high level is a remarkable experience, because you're able to see and be like, I can start seeing the pattern of all these different people from very different and distinct cultures and how they come to be who they are. And for example,
how does that translate into how he folds his socks?
Well, it was just an interesting piece of we ended up discussing quite extensively socks, and for example, how he cooks, because he uses a sous vide, for example.
Right.
And it's very interesting. And you start noticing, especially when you spend a bit of time around a person, you get all these little details, and it starts building up, and you're like, oh, interesting, right? So for example, I might ask you, oh, Sean, like why do you wear a whoop? Right? And you tell me, I'm like, oh, interesting. And then, maybe a few days later, just because we're around each other all the time, I'm like, oh, Sean, like you mentioned this, da, da, da. And you start to really build out an understanding of the person, and not just the individual, but the culture that they were raised in and where they come from. So for example, we were both raised in the UK, but you're actually South African, spent a large portion of your life in South Africa. And so how's that influenced you and why? And even our raisings in the UK, how is that different? And it's so interesting to get into those details. But going back to your question, is I find Dubai a remarkable place and a remarkable collection of people. Primarily entrepreneurs are also my friends, not exclusively. And I find that Dubai attracts many of the best people from all around the world. And people come, and for example, even my own experience, I wasn't planning to stay in Dubai long term. I came to Dubai initially just to visit because my friend and now business partner just invited me. He said, hey, I have a spare room. The guy I was staying with went back home. So I have a spare room for a few weeks. Do you want to come out and we can just hang out? Like, sure. I come out to Dubai and I'm like, wow, the weather is amazing. I came right at the end of October, so I came the best time. The weather is amazing. The people are fantastic. So many of the entrepreneurs or friends that I respect the most are also based here. The quality and the opportunities available are phenomenal. I liked the time zone because I was always working very heavily with the UK. And in the UK, it meant that I was 3 or 4 hours ahead. And so it meant that I had my mornings free. And I was like, wow, this is actually just amazing.
Yeah.
And as I stayed and as I spent longer here, and my friend at the time was like, I'm going to move here. I'm going to become a resident of Dubai and establish a long-term base here. I was like, kind of spontaneously, I was like, count me in.
Nice.
I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And I've been here ever since.
Mine's the same story. I came here for a couple of weeks, set up a business, and then ended up staying for 2 years, and I'm still here. But I think one thing you missed is how efficient this place is from everything. Catching taxis, you'll have a taxi outside your door within a minute, to kind of your laundry services, food services. You can get doctors to the door.
Yeah.
Keep ranting on about this with everyone, but it's just it makes it so easy for you to focus on the things you want to do. So if that's business, that's business. If that's going out to fancy restaurants, it's going out to fancy restaurants. So yeah.
Agree. Agreed. And actually, after our first year here, we were taking a look and we were trying to find, is there a better apartment? Because we kind of stumbled into the apartment that we have. It's a great apartment, beautiful view, and it was kind of expensive. And we got it on Airbnb. And initially, my friend found it, my business partner. And then we're looking at, okay, is there a better option? And we were looking around for our budget. And we found literally where we are is very close to a gym, 2-minute walk from a gym. It's got great facilities in the building. It's a 90-second walk from the shop. And if we choose to, we can have everything very centrally located, very efficient. We used to go to a gym 15-minute walk away, and then you end up having to do the thing, especially when it's warm and hot. It's like the friction you start to notice. And now is I have a laundry service, a cleaner, all these things are very low cost and makes, as you say, everything's very easy to do. And I can just do whatever I want to do. Travel time's minimal, or it's just easy in a taxi and I can do other things while I'm traveling. I don't need to do my laundry, my cleaning, etc. And the biggest friction I have is I need to go on the app and book it. And that's it. Yeah. So it works very, very nicely. Sean, you mentioned that you've been part of a lot of different business groups. What would you say is some of the best business groups you've been part of or that you're part of now that you're really investing in?
So the one we initially met in, I've been with them, I think, 4 years now, 2021. exceptional. A lot of young entrepreneurs and that are being really successful. I've recently joined Dan Martell's group, and I'm meeting up with a couple of entrepreneurs here in Dubai, super successful as well. And there's a lot of value in these business groups. It's sometimes difficult to find. There's a lot of groups out there that don't deliver on what they say they can deliver, but these two groups have really been pivotal in my success over the last couple of years. And yeah, it's worth paying the money to get the course and cut your learning time down in half. And that's the great thing about the group we're in. I get to question you and other entrepreneurs on how did you solve this problem, and I don't have to try 12 different ways before I find the one that kind of works for my company. All our kind of paths are slightly different, but usually there's some commonality in the kind of way we solve problems, which is really, really helpful. Majority of the time it's just do this and that works, and that's great. I'm 10 steps ahead of the other agencies out there trying to do it on their own.
Yeah. What do you find about Dan Martell's group specifically that's really helped you?
Dan Martell's got a lot of very good processes, really, which he keeps gated. So he's pushing out tons of free content, which is excellent, but the real business content that he's kept online in the process is very, very useful. And then it's the networking that I'm finding super useful. I'm networking with very successful entrepreneurs here that meeting with a guy next week possibly that has interviewed Elon Musk, Alex Hormozi, Tom Bilyeu, Tucker Carlson, very well connected. I'm super excited to have that meeting and have a chat with him and start building that relationship. What's your experience with the business groups? I know you've been to Maverick, Richard Bransons Island, you're in BMI with me, and you were at a point spending quite a lot of money when you were younger on joining these kind of groups, right?
Yeah. I invested very heavily in a lot of these groups when I was younger. I do it much less so now. And I think where I was at the beginning is I was trying to get the exposure of entrepreneurship and business and find and connect with a lot of very like-minded people. And that was a great success. I've met many, many incredible people, including yourself, through those groups that have allowed me to then set myself up with the environment, and I'll even say like the norm of entrepreneurship and doing exceptional things. Now I focus on them less because I find that most of my attention is best placed towards like pushing forward what I'm working on, though I still find tremendous benefit from them. So I continue to partake in the ones that I've known and vetted is phenomenal, which is businessmentor.com, which is the one we met through, and is Maverick 1000, or specifically Maverick Next.
Nice.
And through those, I get tremendous opportunities, insights, clarity, etc. And I think really what I'm thinking about now and how I view these is very similar to you, is how is this going to solve my business problems? How is this going to highlight for me my potential blind spots? And what I find with all of those is part of it does come from, the coach content or whatever, but it comes primarily from the people that I'm meeting. Because I have people who have similar goals and working similar things. And for example, you might say, Tim, the way you're doing this, it's not a good idea. And maybe I'm like, I never even thought of that. And it just helps me evolve and grow much faster as an individual. And I'm 25. And so I'm nearly just entirely potential. Everything that I've achieved so far in life is merely the early stages of what I will go on to become. And so I'm focused, still even to this day, nearly entirely on what is the potential that I'm gaining, as opposed to what is it that I'm doing or achieving. And naturally the two are correlated, because you need to go and achieve in order to unlock opportunities. But I focus so much more on the question, who is this going to make me into, as opposed to who am I becoming, as opposed to what am I going to get from this? Because getting is very short term, and becoming is much more long term.
Nice.
And something I've also noticed or observed about you, Sean, is you're someone who's able to very elegantly bridge the gap between a very comprehensive technical understanding, both software, longevity, other things, and you're very good at articulating in a way that people can understand, is accessible, and you're able to abstract the technical complexity. Is that something you've intentionally trained, or how do you come to be like that?
No, I'm just generally, I look at systems and I understand, I don't know if this is from years of working with systems, but it's what I kind of look for in developers as well. I want someone that tests their work quite methodically. Then when they get to an issue, they fix it and they go back to the start and they retest all the different scenarios. And I'm very good at looking at a system, and this is how it should work, and these are the user interactions. And that's really what my clients find very valuable in me, is I can come in and I say, I go into teams of 12 to 20 developers with the product managers, the founders and stakeholders, and I say, look, this is how you want to do this. And very quickly I can tell them this is the correct user experience or the best user experience for this kind of product. And I'll jump off the call and they carry on and fix it. But yeah, that's where really my value lies, is looking at systems and processes and being able to tell you this is the quickest way to do it and the most effective way to do it. These are your other options, but I really recommend this. This will work correctly.
Amazing.
Cool. Thank you so much for doing this, Tim.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Of course.